Can I please get a motion to accept the September meeting minutes as recorded? Moved by Dick, second by Andrea. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. And before we get into presentations, I'll just remind everybody, if you are speaking, please remember to use the microphone. And for any employees or members of the public who will be speaking, we do have a microphone up front, but the recording system won't pick it up unless you use the mics. So the first matter that we have on here is courthouse renovations. Cassandra? Remind me which departments that are here won't be here. So there's Veteran Services, Buildings and Grounds. Who else? Okay. Okay. So really, we're making a lot of space by all these moves. So it seems that's part of what's pushing us to do this, but then also the practical issues with IT being in the basement and just departments distributed across different floors and offices.
So the reason that I have been labeled Debbie Downer is that um, we and the team has done an awesome job putting this together. And there's nothing that Cassandra presented that I disagree with in any way. But the HVAC project, which is really the bulk of any expense, I believe is going to be much more disruptive and costly than, we might be able to do some of this stuff in the next couple of years, just moving people around and maybe moving some walls and buying new furniture, cubicles and whatnot. But the HVAC for this building, I think is going to be a more intensive project. So we've got some distribution systems such as the radiators that you see here. Those are from the 1940s. You've got our air distribution system with the rooftop unit that it dates back to the 2008. And then you've got a boiler in the basement that dates back to 1997. So we're not running a very efficient system at the moment, and the comfort levels in this building are not the best. So we've got a lot of people that have really, really hot offices, and a lot of people that have really cold offices because we've put up walls between return vents and heat vents, and other such ill-advised things in the past. So we're, getting the floor plan worked out first before you tackle HVAC is the right way to do it, because you don't want to do your HVAC and then change your floor plan. So that's kind of why we're thinking that if we can get some of this stuff done, we could maybe simultaneously work on some engineering for the HVAC, and maybe that project could be bid out in 25 or 26. So that's where we're at.
Any other thoughts from the committee?
Good job, Cassandra.
Thank you.
Not so much you, Ryan.
Has this gotten good feedback then from the departments?
Of course, it's not going to make everybody happy 100% because, if we could start from scratch and build a whole new building, of course. But I think for the most part, people are understanding and happy with some of the changes. Yeah.
Yep. Do you need anything from us now, or is this just to educate us, get us thinking about it?
Eric, remind me what we plugged in a certain amount in the budget just for some of the stuff next year. I don't remember what it was.
Yes, our capital guru, Brian, is not here today, but I think we put $200,000 in next year just for moves and construction renovation. Likely a solid number, probably, more than needed for that first phase. So there is a placeholder in the budget for next year as we get started on those phases.
Like purchasing cubicles and stuff is going to make the spaces more usable anyway. So I think, a combination of some light renovations and some furniture changes is going to put us pretty far ahead. So.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much for that presentation. Next on our schedule, we have just some discussion time set aside. We're not looking to set a public hearing right now, but this is for the local law. I think that was sent out a week or two ago, regulating camping on county property. I hope everybody's had a chance to review that, and I wonder if there are any comments people want to share. And I'd open that up to any of our department staff who have some things they'd like to discuss with it.
So Ian, we did have some feedback from Tim Hunt and a couple of other people that Jackie and I are going to look at in terms of what we sent out and see if we can address one issue that Tim brought up. Looks
Mhm.
like we need to better define our primitive camping which we will do and then recirculate
Yep.
to the board. And if anybody else has any comments, we'll try to address them and incorporate them. And Larry had given us some language changes too early on, so we've incorporated those in the draft that you already have.
Okay, so, and with I had a question as well. It was really just Tim's question. I didn't have a good answer for it. What is the intention with the primitive camping? Do you recall?
Jackie, I'm going to let you answer
Yeah.
that because that's just basic camping in tents, essentially. But only in designated areas. So we have to be a little bit more precise about defining that and
You still need a-
spelling that out.
You still need a permit though to camp. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts or questions on this? What are some of the substantive changes that we're making to any existing camping law? Do we have a camping law right now?
We have a very basic one. This one, we particularly identified Singing Waters because that's a park
Okay.
now that we have where there's specific kinds of camping, overnight camping, reservations, and also day use for the pavilion. So we wanted to spell that out very carefully in the camping. We also went through all the regulations for campers on any of the county properties too. So we just tightened up some of that other language. I think we increased the fee and we changed some of the language for enforcement. So those were the general changes we made.
All right. Yep. Okay. Very good. Any thoughts on that? If not, we'll probably have it ready at the next committee meeting for us to move it to the board to set the public hearing and hopefully pass by the end of the year.
We'll set the public hearing for December, so we'll bring it to the November committee meeting. Do the resolution to set the public
I see.
hearing that night, and then we'll pass it in December if everything goes well.
Okay. So that's the last chance if anyone wants to make changes or recommend. I haven't heard any feedback from the community other than just the few emails from the department staff. Oh, okay. Right. Okay. If we're all set with presentations, I believe we can move on to our resolutions.
Okay, the first one is directing the demolition and removal of an unsafe building located at 6314 East Main Street, owned by Ignacio Ahumada, pursuant to local law number 2-2007 in the village of Turin.
All right.
This building is beyond self-saving.
That's what codes has determined.
Okay. So does he have the option of restoring it if that's possible? I haven't seen the building, or is this strictly going to force him to demolish it?
Yeah.
Okay. And he'll state what his intention is, if it is repairable, which codes deems it is not. But he wanted the opportunity to present to the board in November.
Yeah, if he has a game plan, that's his responsibility to bring that forward, and then it'll be up for the board to determine how much time, if any, you're going to give him to do that.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
The next one is appropriating $81,700 in the Highway Department accounts to recognize additional revenue received from the sale of surplus equipment.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing Bridge New York Master Agreement between New York State Department of Transportation and Lewis County for the construction phase under the locally administered federal aid bridge replacement project known as County Road 21 over Gulf Stream.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing Bridge New York Master Agreement between New York State Department of Transportation and Lewis County for the construction phase of the federal aid bridge replacement project known as County Road 43 over Moose Creek.
Any discussion? All in favor aye. Those opposed nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing Bridge New York Master Agreement between New York State Department of Transportation and Lewis County for the preliminary design and construction phase of the culvert replacement project known as Courthouse Road over South Branch of Crystal Creek.
Any discussion?
I think the superintendent of highways is going to be out busy
Yeah.
on some bridges.
All in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing Bridge New York Agreement between New York State Department of Transportation and Lewis County for the right-of-way incidentals acquisition phases of the culvert replacement project known as Courthouse Road over South Branch of Crystal Creek.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing Bridge New York Agreement between New York State Department of Transportation and Lewis County for implementation and funding in the first instance of the culvert replacement project known as Erie Canal Road over Black Creek.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed nay. Motion carries.
Appropriating $220,000 in the public defender accounts to recognize additional grant funds due to increased indigent legal services.
Any discussion? What's the source of the grant funds? Ryan, do you know?
I think it's from the Office of Indigent Legal Defense in New York State.
Is this anything additional above what we normally get, or is this?
This is really kind of just a timing related issue. We have a 5-year agreement, I think, for the statewide portion of the ILS grants. And we budget each year of that 5 years on what we estimate will be the activity for that year. As Lewis Defenders goes through the year and does their work, and then depending on when they bill us is when we have to process the payments out to them. So it's more timing related. We didn't budget as much this year as the activity they've actually moved through the system.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All in favor say aye. Those opposed nay. Motion carries.
Fixing the public hearing date on the proposed addition of 0.7 miles of OHV trails in the town of Lewis to the Lewis County OHV trail system for Tuesday, December 5th, 2023 at 5:00 PM.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed nay. Motion carries. Great. And next we will, do we have any motions actually?
No, there are no motions.
Okay. All right. Any other business to bring before the General Services Committee today? Okay. If there being no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn? All right, made by Dick, second by Andrea. All in favor, say aye. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
This is committee meeting to order, please. I will make a motion to approve the September 19th committee meetings if no amendments. If I can get a second. Thank you, Andrea. For discussion items today, Lewis County Health System repayment discussion. A month ago, Lewis County approached the county about repaying a loan. We've had some time to think about it. And so we're just going to open that up on the floor for discussion. Does anyone have anything they'd like to start off with? If not, I will just say my opinion. I have made it clear that I don't necessarily think that maternity is a safe and wise decision. However, I'm not on the hospital side of it. I'm not seeing what the hospital is seeing. And again, hospital runs hospital, county runs the county. I think that this is money that the county borrowed, and we are an opportunity right now that we could pay it back in full. We don't have anything that we need this money for right now. We don't have any projects coming up. And if the hospital could use it for a project, I think we should give it to them. Well, not even give it to them, give it back to them.
I'm not on the committee, but I totally concur with that. I think it's most appropriate to give them that money.
I told you to be quiet, Phil.
You said if I agreed with you, I could talk.
Okay, I'll let it slide.
I have a question. Is our hospital running at full capacity right now? Is our nursing home full? Do we have enough employees right now?
Yes. The microphone is on for the,
The beds that are available on the acute side, we're running at full capacity, and that is 19 beds because we're in the middle of our project. So half of medical surgical is off limits because of the revitalization. On the nursing home, I believe the census this morning is 120. That is 75% of total capacity. Our license for 160. As you know, the state has administered a minimum staffing requirement in long-term care. So as we add staff, we are able to add residents. If we don't do it that way, then we are at risk for daily fines and not meeting the state minimum requirements for long-term care. Did I answer your question? Okay.
any other thoughts?
How long was this loan payback period? How much longer do we have to pay back this loan?
It's open-ended in the MOU. And what the MOU says is that the county will be paying it back by the annual reallocation arrangement with the hospital, which runs from, Eric may know better, but I think anywhere from 180 to 250 a year of reallocation credit that we get against that obligation. I don't think any other direct payments were made under that MOU. There's also a provision in the MOU that it could be totally forgiven by the hospital as well. So it's open-ended.
The allocation that Joan's talking about is an administrative cost that we are entitled to charge the hospital for payroll, civil service, some legal, some administration, those types of things. It's not a cash exchanging hands type thing. We send the bill, the way the MOU is structured, the county would send the bill, and then the amount of the bill would be deducted from the debt, more or less.
My only concern is just because of the MOU, that we do have this legal agreement essentially in place. Is there a middle of the road option out there or a way to basically earmark this money to be used for a specific project? Or I assume we have past precedents of kind of going against the MOUs probably in the past.
Well, as Joan said, it's open-ended. I mean, is there an appetite? You said middle of the road. What are you thinking?
I didn't know without completely invalidating the MOU and the repayment terms that were structured in it. Is there a way to allocate a certain amount this year and then more in next year's fiscal budget? Or are we comfortable that we have enough money and nothing else is going to come out of the sky tomorrow?
We're going to talk a little bit about fund balance at the next committee meeting when we talk about the budget. I mean, our projection for year end will be around $27 million for fund balance. So that's where we're projecting we will be.
Yeah, even for a rainy day, we are prepared for a rainy day. And
So just to clarify on the MOU, Jessica, the minimum payment was the reallocation. Of course, every agreement basically says you could make additional payments if and when the county would want to. So that was also a provision in the MOU.
I guess how I'm looking at it is the county wanted to do a project. The hospital helped us. Right now, the hospital wants to do a project. And so I guess I would, if I made a motion, I'm wondering what the feeling is if we have support to move a draft resolution forward for the full committee to pay back the loan.
I may be agreeable to a portion of it, but I don't know if we should move the full amount. Does the hospital have a direct need for it now?
Yeah, I think you had to step out for the last
Right,
meeting.
I
They
did.
do have plans to spend the money to hopefully open up maternity, is the project that was presented. And it
And
would
I-
be my understanding.
But I thought we had a discussion before that they were going to need so much money from us every year to run that maternity.
Yes. Yeah.
So we were presented with the opportunity to request from the Board of Legislators support for one item. And after Jeff Hellinger is our CFO, we felt, why ask for new money, if there is money that is owed or we would transfer back. So that was our thinking. 2, maternity will require a subsidy for a period of time moving forward. And by transferring the money back to us, that is how we would fund it if we have to go down that path. So that was our thinking. So, and we also have fund balance requirements. Shortly after Mr. Pache and I arrived, and with the county support, the county legislators and the Board of Managers, we made a commitment to keep a fund balance of 2 months worth of expenses. And we have done that faithfully since the policy was established a period of time. For us right now, that's $14 million. We are working off a bond to finish the construction of the building project. When that is incorporated into it, our available fund balance will be $4 million. And Jeff Hellinger reviewed this with the Board of Managers Finance Committee on Monday morning. So for us, that's feeling a little light, especially since we're making the commitment to maternity. So that's why it seemed like the logical thing to request and have you consider that. Can I answer your question?
So you won't be requesting then from us for the maternity if we do this type thing. This is kind of takes its place.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
But do you think you can employ that many people to keep it going? I feel like you're shorthanded now as a patient there. For 3 days, I felt you were short-staffed. And
I
I'm
can't
not
say-
an employee there, so I don't know. I was just the patient.
So a lot of it will depend on the time period you were there, what was going on that time. We have different departments and each department has their own unique needs. We are staffed appropriately in the current period in the emergency department, medical, surgical, and our clinical service lines. The area that we pay most attention to right now is the nursing home because it's going to be census dependent. And what I can tell you is every 2 weeks we do an orientation and every 2 weeks we've had CNAs. Our greatest need in the nursing home is not CNAs, which is sort of the popular opinion. It's the LPNs. BOCES shut down the program at Sackett's 3 years ago. And, I've been in touch with the Watertown program, and all of the LPNs in the program there are committed to Samaritan. Now, even if they weren't, our program here service the Lewis County and Lawrence County residents who live near our border. And generally speaking, Jefferson County residents went to the BOCES in Watertown. For an LPN, it's a heck of a commute to come down. And we don't have an alternative. Our short-term alternative is we are hiring RNs in lieu of LPNs at the nursing home. Now, from a standard of care perspective, they're better trained and they bring a different level of critical thinking. So that will be helpful. And that may be the future of long-term care because there are very few LPNs being trained now. And I think you're going to see during my working career, the LPNs kind of go by the wayside. There just won't be enough of them trained. And that happens from time to time. Different skills, are focused on. So we are staffed appropriately. And at the nursing home, it is tied very closely to the minimum staffing requirements of the DOH. Yep, thank you.
I can tell you that I was at the hospital this morning helping teach clinicals through JCC. And this year, for this semester, they have JCC clinicals there Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday on the med-surg floor. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And I can't remember the last time they had 3 different groups going through there during the week. So it's promising. Yeah. So I guess if we make a resolution to pay back the amount in full and we move that to the full board, it would be for the full board to then decide if that's, I guess with this committee, I guess I'm going to put that up for a resolution. Yes, to put it to the full board. So I'll make that motion if I could get a second. Thanks, Jessica. Okay, so then all in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay. Andrea and Jessica. So is Dick, you didn't say nay, so I'm.
I think we've got an MOU in place that we've talked a little bit about. Somebody's got to address that somehow. I go back and I told several of you, we had $6 million in our funds that's paying off our insurance and claims. We made a motion to have a couple of holidays, I believe, with that $6 million. Right now, it'd be awful nice to have that $6 million that we could spend and help out a little bit because things that we didn't see happened. So before I can vote yes or no, I think we've got to develop what we're going to do with the MOU that's in place. And then we've got to write down how and when this money's going to be used. Jeff, I think you at one time talked about a $2 million, $2.5 million loss in maternity. Yep. And this amount you're asking for is?
It would be the loan
Full
payback,
balance of the loan, which is 5 million something.
5.3 or.
Mhm. So that if that's what that's going to do, I'd rather see the money stay with the county. And then we've got it for sure for the maternity when it comes due. In other words, 2.5 million a year for the next 5 years roughly is how that would work. So I offer that thought.
So if I can add a few comments. We shared with the legislators a document that showed that there was money forgiven in the past by the county for the hospital. I shared that document with the hospital yesterday, and they would like some time. They feel that that report is not accurate, and they would like some time to rebut that or review it to find out if there is truly any money that's been forgiven or not. I think there is a high level of uncomfortability with the legislators in that on this, as the document stands now, that there's a considerable amount of money that has been forgiven by the county in the past. The hospital feels that that is not true, but they asked for more time to review this before we came to a decision. So this committee here really is just continuing to move the discussion forward until the full board meeting on the 1st of November. And in that time period, we could continue to review this document and put it to bed whether or not there's any money that's still out there. And I think the legislators would be in a more comfortable situation knowing the answer to that question before they were to vote on it. And that's, that's the full board meeting in November. And this committee is just moving it forward to that time.
So just 2 points of order. There was a motion by Lisa to, for this committee to vote to move it forward to pay off the entire balance of the debt. Dick,
that
you
we
have
can-
to vote.
So that we can
So,
discuss it as a full.
so Dick, you didn't vote yet, so we would have to have your vote. Otherwise, I guess it would be taken as an abstention or a no. Now, Larry, to me, is posing a potential amendment to your motion. Well, he's ex officio, member of every committee, but whether, he can't vote, but he can propose something. So I bring it to you, back to you, Lisa. If you want to continue with your motion to pay off the entire amount, or consider the motion to amend and refer it to further discussion for the entire board at the board meeting after the hospital and everybody else can review the resolutions where debt was forgiven over a number of years.
Regardless if the motion says to pay off the full amount, or, I mean, would we put a motion to say to pay back an unknown amount? Is that what you're suggesting, Larry, or?
The only thing I'm suggesting is we take a little time to hopefully raise the legislators' comfort level that they're comfortable with whatever, wherever we end up with funding. I don't, at this point, there's only this document. It was hastily prepared. It's very difficult to follow the money train. The hospital doesn't feel that it's accurate. There's I think that most legislators are not comfortable with the money that this document represents as forgiven. And I think we would be in a much better position with more time to review the history to find out what level everyone would be comfortable with at funding this. Maybe it would be half, maybe it would be all of it. But at this point, I don't know as any one of us have identified where we are with that.
Right. Lisa, just to get to your point, and Joan, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what it would have been is passing the motion to get to the full board, which could have been amended. So even though the motion would have been for the full amount at the full board,
Yeah,
just
the
why I
full- it can
seconded
be-
it,
yeah, it
that
can
we
be
could then
amended.
amend it.
Right, but
Yeah.
it needs, well, I mean, it could always be a late resolution
Yeah.
to go to the full board, but to simply move matters along, I made the motion. I guess
That's
right now,
why I seconded it.
I guess it would just be to tally all the votes, so.
You can call for a show of hands.
Well, I think it just pick yes or no, because we have no, no, yes.
I don't know
yes.
who voted.
Dick did not vote.
Yeah, we don't
Who
have a
voted in
vote from
favor of
legislator
moving it
Chartrand.
forward? That's only two.
Right.
If the motion is simply to take it to the full board and we're going to have more discussion, that makes a difference. That's what I want to try to find out what the motion is. I remember when we put the MOU together, and even if that was hasty, we had a lot of discussions ahead of that by the time we got that MOU together. So if I'm voting to pay back 100% based on the dollars today, I can't vote that way. Once I see where the money's going, because if we give back the full amount and it doesn't go, things arise where money's got to be spent all the time. And it doesn't stay there to keep maternity going for the 5 years. I think the people I talk to in this community would like to have babies delivered at Lewis County General Hospital again. And I would vote to support that effort. You've got enough votes to pass the motion to move it to the full board.
The motion on the floor is that to repay the full amount to the hospital. So we have legislator Morahan and legislator Nellenbach are opposed. Legislator Verkler and legislator Mosier are in favor.
What I'm hearing is, what are we in favor or not in favor of? I mean, we can blanket give back the, whatever it's going to be, $5 million or what have you. I don't think for maternity, the hospital needs the $5 million immediately right now. But I would like that whole amount put in some fund that would fund maternity and having babies again at the hospital. So I would vote yes to move this discussion to the full board and give us the time frame between now and then to write the document of what's going to have, what the money's going to be used for, and then vote on that as a full board.
I think you'd have to make a different motion because that is not as I have.
That would be an
made the motion.
amendment to her motion if you want to treat it that way.
If the motion is to give them back the full amount at this time, I want more information before I make my vote.
Okay.
And I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of you, Lisa, but I think that's fine. Lisa and I were basically just saying we want to get it to the full board.
Right. But I guess if it comes in, it'll have to come in as a late resolution rather than this
Yeah,
route.
we don't have the authority to give it all back. The full board does. So that's why it's got to go to the full board.
Which is what the motion was looking to do. Because it can go to the full board and then the full board can make an amendment to the resolution saying, oh, let's give them $1 million instead of the 5.5. But I guess we will wait for continued discussion. I would just like to say that at the end of the day, we are in a position to pay back this money. We don't have any plans for this money. Even if, I feel like even if we give, transfer this back and it's not used for maternity, they could have rainy days, the hospital could have rainy days, that it would be beneficial for them to have this loan amount back. Any other discussion on it before we move on? Jerry, Jeff, anything else before we move on?
This is before you today, because we were asked to bring one item forward. So we brought it forward in good faith, and we brought it forward believing there are no outstanding balances to the county. And I appreciate that we should be able to show you, we've done that work and we are prepared to show whichever committee comes together afterwards. We've already restricted most of the money in our fund balance. And we've done that to support those rainy periods That's 2 months worth of expenses. And I think that is prudent and something we should stay committed to. And we did that in the last few years. It is our intention that we will have to support maternity for a period of time. Now, when I say maternity, I mean maternity and GYN services. And it's really the GYN services that will support us being able to deliver babies. That's how it will work. But there will be periods, we believe, that it won't cover itself. We won't generate enough of a bottom line to cover all of the expenses. It's hard to know year over year what those will be. I believe it'll be smaller each year moving forward. But just know, $14 million of our fund balance is already restricted. That leaves us $4 million now for the rainy day. That is a lot of money for the average person, but for an institution that's going to have a $92 million budget, it isn't incredibly large. And we are an important economic driver in our community. And this is all about that as well. So thank you, Councilor Berkler.
Okay, moving on to draft resolutions, please.
The first one is authorizing renewal agreements between the County of Lewis and various providers for substance abuse and other mental health disorders.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Reappointing Tina Cummings and Louise Fox to the Community Services Board Developmental Disabilities Subcommittee effective January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2027.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Reappointing Anna Platts and Melanie Saber to the Community Services Board effective January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2027.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Appropriating additional New York State grant funds in the amount of $61,000 for the Unmet Needs Program and transferring funds in the amount of $150,000 from special contingency and contingency for the Senior Meals Program.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Authorizing agreements between Office for the Aging and various providers for program services in 2024.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Carries. Oh, can we just go back? Sorry.
Yes.
I was going to have Carla speak about, I thought it was number 5, but it's number 4, the increase for the OFA meal spending, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to address. So from 2022 to 2023, January to September, if we look at total meals, home delivered and congregate, we've had a 28% increase from last year to this year. If we go back to pre-COVID, like 2019 numbers, and we look at total meals, we've had a 54% increase. So that's where we're looking for the additional funding.
Awesome. Perfect. That's great that so many more people are utilizing the
Yes.
service.
Yeah.
Do you think that other counties are also seeing that increase, or are we doing better than other counties?
I think overall we're seeing an increase, especially now with the additional SNAP COVID funds that have gone away. And so we're seeing more people with food insecurity. So I think we're going to see an increase, and I would suspect that's other counties as well. But we're meeting the needs, so.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you.
Let's hope we can continue to do that. Sorry, Cassandra, continue.
Authorizing consultant agreement between Office for the Aging and Amanda Wolnoff, registered dietitian, to provide oversight of the work completed by CNS for compliance with the nutrition standards of the nutrition program at a rate of $50 per hour up to 16 hours per week from January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Authorizing agreement between Lewis County Public Health Agency and Michelle Nikitich to provide occupational therapy to children receiving preschool special education services from January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024 at rates set by NICED and annually adopted by the board.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Supporting Operation Greenlight in recognition of active military service members and those in transition to civilian life.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Carries.
Appointing April Seymour Ritz as a member of the Youth Bureau Advisory Board to fill a current vacancy effective November 7th, 2023 through June 30th, 2025.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. And if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Thank you. In a second. Okay. Adjourn.
I'll make a motion. Everybody's received a copy of the September 19th committee minutes. I'll make a motion that they be approved as written unless somebody has any changes. Bill seconds it. All in favor, say aye. Minutes stand approved. We have a presentation of the 2024 budget workshop presented by Ryan. It says 20 minutes. We'll see about that. Yep.
That's okay.
Tom, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's 68 slides.
No.
Thank you, Ryan, for being so efficient. 42.
It'd be easier for me if you guys just got the budget delivered without a presentation.
We got faith.
And we got this fancy new lapel mic too. So just revisiting the budget process here. We actually skipped over personnel this year because we had several requests. So we're going to hit some of that today. October 17th, today we have a workshop. The tentative budget, the official document, will be delivered to the legislators at the November 7th board meeting. And then we'll have our hearing on November 1st, and the budget can be adopted anytime after the hearing. So what are we doing today is the budget workshop. The budget is not done. This is not the tentative budget. This is time for discussion, feedback, and buy-in to make sure everybody's on the same page when the budget does officially arrive on the 7th. We're talking about broad strokes today, not really department by department rundown. And as always, if folks want to get more involved in budget discussions, we can do budget workshops. So kind of just our budget philosophy this year, it's slightly different. So I can hit a couple things. As always, we're trying to make sure that property tax and sales tax county There we go. So we always talk about making sure that our property tax and sales tax are used to fund county operations, other grants and fund balances, and those types of things really should not be incorporated into your operational budget. It's important that you separate those two things. We always talk about the two buckets. And then, we don't want to pre-charge taxpayers for unknown expenses, right? So IGT, for example, you don't load that up every year knowing that it might not fully come in. This year, I've asked department heads to approach things a little differently. We do have a healthy fund balance at this point. So I think that it would be better to be slightly short than to dip into fund balance than run another large surplus like we have the last few years. So that was a bit of a different philosophy this year. And then I think the main point that we've been talking about for quite some time here is that in the long run, the best way to contain tax is to expand the base. That is the best way to reduce the tax rate over time. And we've got some evidence that that is working here in Lewis County. So we have new fiscal targets that were adopted by this committee just last month. So we don't need to go over those again since we should all be familiar with them. Fund balance summary, here's where things stand today. The general fund is a year-end estimate. It's hard to get exactly a point in time always with our general fund. But the rest of the funds, as you can see, Jerry had just mentioned the $18 million with the hospital, and then solid waste a little lower than we like at 282. Everything else, workers' comp healthy, and health insurance fund balance below $1 million. As well. So two things to watch there would be solid waste and health insurance. Capital is still artificially high because we still have bills to be paid from the bond. So those bonds funds are still in there. in that account. So just a historical look at our fund balance as a reminder. We've actually talked a lot about 2018 today. So you can see right there, the from 17 to 18, that was the JCC project and our IGT catch-up year that caused the fund balance to drop. Since then, we've built it back up and are projecting to be around 27 million by the end of the year. So the budget summary, this is really the meat of it here. So total appropriations are up about 5%. We'll have about a $62 million budget next year. Of course, if the legislators approve. Total revenue, however, is really the story. The revenue continues to be very strong. That means that the balance that we need on the property tax levy can actually be reduced. This is the first time we'd be reducing the levy in several years, many, many years, in fact. And that creates a 15.6% decrease in the property tax rate, which would mean that $1,000 of property tax value would be taxed at $6.37, which is quite a bit of savings compared to last year. So like I said, revenue is really the main story here. Full taxable value is a big part of what's driving our ability to lower taxes. Our full taxable value has grown 15% year over year. I was quite skeptical of that number when it first came out. I asked Candy again and again to confirm, and all the assessors stand by their work. So it is true, we've gone up 15% in assessed value, but really in the long term, over 10 years, we've gone up 30%. So the assessed value in Lewis County continues to grow. And obviously, as you grow the base, that means that your rate can be lowered. We also talked a couple months ago about building permits. So a big part of that base growth is new construction. We've had over $200 million of new construction in the community over the last 5 years. There's no doubt that that drives the total base up. So our property tax levy, as you can see, there's a 3% decrease, as I already mentioned. It's not often that you decrease the levy, but we are able to do that this year. And then this is really what folks are going to see is their tax bill. So you can see there the rate dropping from $7.54 to $6.36, which is a 16% decrease in the tax rate. And then here's some historical perspective on that. What we're talking about here with $6.36 is the lowest tax rate in Lewis County in 27 years. So since you'd have to go back to 1997 to find a year in which we had a tax rate that was this low in Lewis County. So what does that mean for the folks of Lewis County? Well, for the median household in Lewis County, that means our median household is $122,000 assessment. That's what the most likely house is. That is $144 worth of savings in 1 year for that median household on their tax bill. And you can see how that breaks down for other types of property. So if you've got property valued at $100,000, your savings will be $117. Like we mentioned, $144 for the median home value. If your property is valued at $200,000, that's $234 of savings, and $300,000, that's $351 worth of savings. So this is significant money that is going back into the pockets of the taxpayers of Lewis County. This chart should be familiar. We talked about it a few months ago, but it kind of makes the point here, where are these increases in the base coming from? You can see we only had 2 town revaluations, Diana and Loudville. The rest of them have made the same, but equalization does change the story a little bit. So everyone will realize an equal amount of savings. That's how equalization works, but the rate that will change on your bill will be different by town. So you can see here, depending on the equalization rate is what you'll see in your town. So you will save on your tax bill, but the rate of change will be different. So think of it this way. If you're in Krogan, I always like to pick on them because they have the worst equalization rate, and your house, they say your house is only worth $80,000, you save 8% of 80,000. That's the same as 16% of 120,000. You know what I'm saying? So it all comes out in the wash, but the percent difference you'll see on your bill will vary by town. So let's use an example of one lovely home in Loudville and someone who tends to know that their tax money gets put to good use. I bought this house in 2021 for 140,000, so I rightly got reassessed this year. Okay, so my assessment last year was 128. The town reassessed me to 151. My tax bill, even in this scenario with a town that did a reval, I'm even going to save $7. So everybody in the community really should save. Every taxpayer should really save under this model. Sales tax, obviously another big piece of our revenue here. Eric, do you want to talk a little bit about sales tax and what we've been seeing?
Yes, and so, I mean, you see those numbers every month. 2023 started out very strongly. As you can see the numbers up there, we've had 2 or 3 years of very good growth in sales tax. Things moderated a little bit over the last month with our collections from New York State, but I still expect that we will be close to that 18,253,000 we received in 2022. I think we're projecting right about the same level. So significantly over budget again this year. Ryan and I have taken, a kind of a different approach for next year. We've really bumped that budget number up $3 million, even $3 million, as he said earlier, to getting to the point where we're pretty much balancing sales tax and property tax. That's a good position to be in. I'm not sure what the next slides are, but we don't really see the potential for decrease in sales tax is always there. We just never really know where the economy is going to go, where economic conditions for our citizens will change. But if things continue on the trajectory they've been on, we should continue to see that growth.
Yeah. So philosophically, we've talked about this the last couple of years. We just need to do a better job budgeting sales tax. I mean, we were under budget last year by $5 million, 5.4. In fact, the year before that, we were under budget by 7.3. This year, we're thinking, it's going to be around 3 million. So booking that revenue and applying it properly is part of the reason that we're able to reduce the levy, right?
And so, I mean, those over budget amounts in recent years, if that's what's driven our fund balance to the levels it is. So this year, with a different approach where we're increasing that sales tax amount in the budget, allows us to be more conservative or reduce the property tax amount. And, we'll see where it ends up, but theoretically not be as over budget on the sales tax.
Yep. A few more notes on sales tax. Like Eric said, we're up to 17.7 is what we're anticipating next year. That's what we've put into the budget. Eric also mentioned sales tax is now nearly equal to the property tax levy. So if we're at 17.7 for our sales tax budget revenue, and we're at 18.2 for our levy, they're almost equal. I was at the NISAC conference earlier this month, and I asked around the room of county managers, administrators, and they said, yeah, we've been like that for years. So it's not unusual in New York State to have that type of funding model. Online purchases and tourism continue to drive our sales tax trends. We'll get into that a little bit. But here's the important piece. Sales tax growth offsets the levy. Sales tax growth represents economic development, economic activity in our community. The more of it you have, the more you're able to reduce your levy. That's a very simple equation.
And some of that is coming from people that do not live in Lewis County. I think I was just having the recent conversation that people come here to ski or canoe or ride their ATV, and at a minimum, they're likely going to buy a tank of gas and a meal somewhere, and that's money that stays in our community and drives up that sales tax.
Yes, the people who live here, they pay sales tax, of course, but they are definitely the ones paying property tax. So if we can offset the tax of the folks lives here by the folks that visit, that makes a lot of sense. So a few more notes on sales tax. Online sales tax now makes up 10% of total sales tax collected in Lewis County. You got to remember, that was a revenue source that did not exist before the Supreme Court case in 2019 said that they do, internet sales do have to collect sales tax. Building materials and supplies still in 2022, from 22 to so far 23, are up 9.8%. Direct selling establishments, your shops and whatnot, up 8%, and restaurants and other eating places up 5%. A few notes on tourism. Tourism accounted for $60 million of direct spending in 2024. This is from the New York State Division of Tourism's annual report. Tourism accounted for $19.7 million in direct wages, and tourism spending has increased 131% in Lewis County since 2019. That's just a Lewis County number, and that's from the State Division of Tourism. Lewis County is still the last in our region in tourism revenue. So we're up 131%, but we're still last. So what does that tell you about the potential that we have? So we'll get into some budget details. We're not going to go department by department, Tom, don't worry. State mandates, still obviously a big piece of the puzzle here. And actually, Eric, I thought of a new one that we'll talk about later. But, you know, our state mandates make up 75% of our tax levy still. So when you get your tax bill in the mail from the county, you've got to remember that 75% of that cost is derived directly from the state of New York. We don't have any ability to play with that. Some general notes, retiree health insurance savings. We have booked a savings of about $700,000 from the Medicare Advantage program that will be going into effect in January. The New York State pension expenditure is up 14%. So the comptroller's office has not had great returns recently in the stock market. So everybody's contribution rates are going up. Health insurance rates, unfortunately, we have built in a 5% premium increase effective June 1st. So it's not a January 1st increase, but with the plan year on June 1st, we have not really seen any evidence. I mean, we've stabilized, but we have not rebuilt that fund balance. So we're going to have to continue to climb a little bit. Debt payments, all of our debt payments are built in, obviously, to the budget. Next year, they'll total $1.8 million. We still owe some money on the courthouse from 2008, and then obviously the projects that we are wrapping up right now from 22 and 23. Contingency, we've left those the same. So you've got regular contingency at $300,000, our special legislative contingency at $300,000. Treasurer's income, Eric, you want to talk about that?
Sure. As we've talked about before, the interest rate environment really has been a benefit to us. And with those healthy fund balances, our revenue is going up. I think even at $400,000, that will be a conservative estimate. So we're pretty comfortable in showing that increase for next year. And the next item too, I think you're aware, we've been talking about the changes from the federal level on the foreclosure process. Still in uncertainty. New York State has not put out their new regulations on foreclosure, but we are eliminating our normal budget for proceeds from the auction until we really get a handle on how that process will work in the future.
One note of housekeeping, fire prevention and emergency management have long been consolidated into a single department, yet in the budget we've kept them separate for a decade, so we put them together. So when you read the budget, you'll get to a page that says fire prevention and everything will be zero. That's because it's been moved in with emergency management. Indigent defense, we talked a little bit about it earlier today, but we're looking at a 17% increase due to the state increase in the 18B panel. So it's not just that the state, moved the rate up to $158 an hour for those attorneys. The county has to pay for it. So that's where we're accounting for that increase. And then we have to renew our conflict defender contract as well. I'm not sure if that'll come to the board before the end of the year, but yes. OFA meals program, Carla touched on that. Overall budget, we bumped up $98,000 to increased due to increased senior citizen participation, as Carla mentioned. We also started an evening meals program a couple years ago during the pandemic. That was a program started with special COVID funding. That funding is gone, but we're going to continue the evening meals program. It's been very popular. That's where you've had the salads and stews, and we've kind of engaged a different demographic. It's kind of the younger OFA eligible folks. So
I think Joan's on the delivery list for that.
And Eric, maybe a year or two away. Buildings and grounds, we're We don't know exactly, quite honestly. We've got several new buildings. What's it going to take to maintain those? So we've put in a little extra money, 77,000 for next year. We'll obviously dial in on that after we've had a year under our belt.
And I'll add there, Ryan, I think some of that is somewhat known. Matt has done a pretty good job. The new contracts for maintenance, if you've got an air conditioning system now at the highway building, so there's a maintenance contract. So some of that is definite dollars that we have not had to incur in the past.
Elections rent, this is a good one. We don't need elections rent anymore because next year they will be moved into a new building that we own. So that has been removed from the budget. Legislator compensation. We have taken the liberty of increasing the legislator's salary from $10,500 to $13,000 and the chairman's salary from $12,000 to $15,000. If Phil doesn't mind, I put him on the spot for a minute here. Phil's done some research about this, and we've looked around the state as well. And, we feel that it's appropriate for the amount of work that and commitment that you guys have to have. Anything to add?
Strangely enough, I did a spreadsheet on that. What do you think, Joan?
I expect nothing less.
With Cassandra's help, I got the salaries of the supervisors of all the towns. And I kind of equate a legislator to a supervisor, really. I think they should be on a par. And the average of the supervisor's salaries was a little over $12,000. So, yeah. And actually, some of them were well over 12,000. I mean, you got one at 22,000, but another one at 4,500, so I took out the top three and the bottom three and it came out at 12 grand for the rest of them. And I think it's definitely appropriate for a considerable increase in that. And I can say that because I'm not going to get it next year, but I'm thinking about rerunning again here now. Just kidding. I'm
Just
not.
for that additional 2,500.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, I think it's most appropriate to have a good increase and then just do a cost of living every year after that. Actually, a couple of towns in St. Lawrence County were way up there, and they were really small towns, and they were considerably more than even what they're proposing for Larry. So, and speaking of that, I think that is most appropriate for the chairman to have a good increase above the legislators for the time that he puts in on this. He's gotten about 16 phone calls since we've been in here today. So
You heard his phone going off too, huh?
oh, yeah.
Okay, Phil's time doesn't count towards mine, I don't think. So the jail, the new MAT program has been put into place in August. And so we're only a few months into that program, but expenses are running hot. So we have plugged in $400,000 for next year, but we'll talk a little bit later about the risk pool item, line items that have the ability to go up on us. And I would say this is chief among them in Lewis County. Inmate board, obviously we don't need to send the inmates out this year because we're done with the HVAC project. So we've reduced that back down to normal historical levels. Recreation, Forestry, and Parks, we did remove the trail security from the budget. We didn't utilize it that should be 2023. We didn't utilize it in 2023. So we've taken that out. Forest products sale, though, we are increasing that revenue from 95,000 to 170,000. We have had excellent timber sales over the last few years. Jackie and her crew do a great job tagging the trees, watching the market, and bidding out at the right time to make sure we're maximizing our forestry resources so we can strengthen that line item. that revenue source. OHV permits, we're going to keep that at 200,000. That's where it's been the last couple of years, and we've hovered right around that number. So we've been pretty close on that revenue. Personnel highlights, as I mentioned, we didn't get a chance to go over this in September because we had more requests than usual. There is a full breakdown of all of the requests and my recommendation, basically what's going to be included in the budget and what isn't. That's been handed out to you. But here are some highlights that I think are worth spending an extra special time on. So in the codes department, we currently have a part-time junkyard inspector. We've had a hard time keeping that position filled. We've gone through, at least 3 folks in the last couple of years. And our most recent person who's in that position has told us he's looking to move on. So what I'm suggesting is we make a full-time inspection officer that will handle all junkyard and property maintenance issues. So allow the code enforcement officers to handle new builds, condemnations, those types of things, and then have a person that can focus just on junkyards and property maintenance issues. We're getting a lot more property maintenance complaints than we ever did in the past. The towns and villages are requesting our service to enforce some of their rules. A request that I made was to create a full-time community engagement specialist. This would increase public engagement and communication. We've talked a lot about it over the last few months here. Having someone that can help us keep the community informed, manage our website, manage our social media, help set up engagement sessions out in the community where we can get the legislators out into the community talking about issues and making sure that we are, it's a new era. Folks want to participate in their local governments, and they're not going to read the newspaper, unfortunately, so we have to come to them. So that's what this position would attempt to accomplish. I wouldn't necessarily envision them always representing the county. I would envision them setting up and helping, come with legislators and other staff to try to set up those opportunities. Yeah. And internal communication, by the way. I mean, we've got a lot going on. We don't always, I'll say it, I don't always communicate effectively to our department heads and the rest of our employees. I think, communication with retirees could be better. They've expressed some interest in many counties have a retiree newsletter, those types of things that we could do to improve communication.
Ryan, so this would be like a PR almost where they could really get because I feel like that's a lot of the issues is we haven't gone across everything that we're working on. And this would give the constituents also an ability to get to us and get information to us more readily then. Okay.
Yep. This is something that, yes, we'd be the first county in upstate New York to do this, but it is very common right now in local governments to be adding these types of roles. So. Sure. Absolutely. Yep. I could envision that. They have a public relations and marketing position at the hospital. But I think, there's a lot of what we do here that intersects with the hospital. It is a county owned hospital. So yeah, helping us talk about those issues and elicit feedback, I think is important. In planning and community development, create a full-time grant coordinator. So it's no secret that our planning department has been getting more and more grants every year. In fact, Cassie was talking to me the other day, it was something like 3 or 4 times or maybe even 5 times more grant money flowing through that office than it was 5 or 6 years ago. So Cassie has asked for someone to help manage that. The thing with grants is once writing them, we're very good at. Once you get them, managing them can be a lot of time and effort just to do the paperwork, the reporting, making sure we're checking every box to continue the funding. So having someone on staff that can help with that, I think is important. Real property tax, this is a big one here. You see 2 full-time positions. Um, a lot of counties in New York State are starting to get into the assessment business. In Lewis County, we have 5 towns next year who have an assessor that is retiring. If, we've long thought that this is a direction that Lewis County Real Property Department would head. If we're going to get into the assessing business to assist the towns, we need to do it this year because we've got a bunch of towns that are going to be searching for a replacement. If you add up all the costs that each of our towns pay for assessment and replaced it with just 2 full-time assessors in the county, it would be significantly less cost to the taxpayers overall. And there are some, you can talk about it with your towns, but there are issues with some of these part-time assessors. They don't keep everything as up to date as you would think. And so another piece of this is the data collector. This data collector can be utilized by all the towns, whether we're doing assessment for them or not. They can use our data collector. I won't say which town, but there was a town that submitted their tax roll this year that had dozens of parcels that were new builds that were not going to be taxed based on the new construction. And so, that stuff gets caught by us. But if they had a data collector to help them keep their records up to date, we could, really it would pay for itself, quite honestly. Yes.
There isn't as many judgment calls as there are now.
Yep. And not only that, but if you go back to our equalization rate, the county would obviously keep any town that, wanted to do business with us, we'd keep their assessment at 100%. So that would eliminate the problems with equalization as well. And this could potentially be shared services where we could get some grant funding back from the state for doing it. So I think it's a wise direction to head. My guess is over the next decade, we'll probably have most of the towns under us, but we're not trying to push them. We're not trying to force them by any means, just having it available.
Are you open to requests from other towns?
Yes, we would need, I think total, if we were to take all assessing in Lewis County, we'd need 2 full-time assessors and 1 data collector, or maybe 2. I forget what Candy said, but we'd need to add to this if we had several towns. But I think if we started with 5 or 6 or 7, that'd be a great place to start. We're already out doing the 911 addresses. The building permits are done here in the courthouse. There's a lot of efficiencies to be had doing it that way. For the Sheriff's Department, there was a request to create a chief deputy position. This would basically be kind of like a counterpoint to the jail lieutenant. Basically, the road patrol sergeants would report to the chief deputy, and that would allow all the sergeants, the way the sheriff has explained it to me, would allow the sergeants to be on the road. So right now, you've got at any given time 2 patrol cars on the road, 1 sergeant back in the office. What the sheriff is saying is, if you can have a full-time administrator over road patrol, they could handle a lot of the paperwork and the things that are keeping the sheriffs at their desk, or excuse me, the sergeants at their desk. And then that would allow us to have 3 cars on the road at all time. So it seemed to me like a reasonable request and investment. But of course, it'll go to the legislators to approve. The theory is that the administrative paperwork, those types of things that are tying the sergeants to their desk, would be alleviated. The second position that the sheriff has requested is a full-time investigator. Sergeant Knight is retiring. This would basically, Sergeant Knight was already assigned full-time to the drug task force. This would basically just make it an investigator assigned full-time to the drug task force. So, and the full list of personnel, like I said, is in the handout. Discussion, thoughts, questions on personnel. Like I said, we usually do this in September, so I don't want to just rush through it. Correct. So sergeant, because we were, for 4 shifts, we had 3 sergeants. 1 shift would go without a sergeant because Sergeant Knight was assigned to the drug task force. So that sergeant would go back to a regular shift, and then the investigator would be full-time drug task force. Anything else? Medicaid, certainly worthy of its own slide, if not several slides, but so we've talked a lot about the FMAP, the Enhanced Federal Medicaid Administrative Revenue, that was created by the United States for entities that administer Medicaid. In New York State, counties administer Medicaid. However, the state has determined that we are not to have the administration funds, and they have diverted, which is another way of saying they've kept the funds, since 2015. So they owe us already roughly $400,000 that we are not going to get back. That has been determined in last year's state budget. That's not coming back to us. In addition, we will not get future FMAP funding. So that means our weekly shares, this is the weekly bill that we pay to the state for Medicaid, are going to go from $82,868 to $97,899 per week. That means the total Medicaid expenditure that we have booked this year will be 5.2, which is our maximum statutory cap. So we are budgeting for a full Medicaid. You know, we aren't required to go any higher by the state of New York than $5.2 million. 4.8 maybe?
No, we budgeted that same amount, given uncertainty in where the state was going to go with that. So we did budget a similar amount last year, but we will be spending less than that for this year.
So our total commitment, we believe, yes, we budgeted at the same, but our commitment's going to go up. IGT is also a Medicaid program. So we are budgeting $2.4 million for IGT as well. So if you combine the 2 Medicaid programs that we have here in Lewis County, and this is not just the only 2 Medicaid programs, by the way, this is just direct Medicaid spending. That's 7.6 million, or 41% of the property tax levy alone is used up by one single program, Medicaid. 12% of the entire county budget next year will be Medicaid. And just a reminder, counties have no control over Medicaid eligibility. The state determines who is eligible for Medicaid, and we have no control over which services and programs are Medicaid reimbursable. So we can't control enrollment and we can't control expenditures, yet we are expected to continue to help foot the bill. Anything to add, Eric? Shared services with Jefferson County, we've got weights and measures that will continue into 2024. Veteran Services is a new contract with Jefferson County that we did last year. I would like to continue that. I think it's worked out okay. Corners contract, however, we will not continue with Jefferson County. They have had the retirement of their forensic pathologist, Dr. Livingstone. They're in the process of searching for a new forensic pathologist, but in the meantime, they don't have anybody. So we are planning in the budget to be taking every autopsy out of the region. It'll either be Schenectady, Binghamton, Onondaga, or Albany. We've budgeted for 30 autopsies with transportation, which is a total cost of $134,000. There's another risk pool item. We don't know how many unattended deaths, suspicious deaths we're going to have. We just don't. So 30 is a conservative guess. Speaking of the risk pool, I've mentioned several of these items already. One item I haven't mentioned is the 730 mental competency evaluations and rehabilitation. We just had another one, Pat informed me, earlier this week. So when a judge determines that someone is mentally incompetent to face trial, it is the county's responsibility to pay for their mental rehabilitation. Well, you'd have to be caught first. And then, Medicaid, I think we're pretty safe. I mean, we budgeted the maximum, but quite honestly, I think that, over the next few years, the state is going to be increasing those caps. I don't think it'll be next year, but it could happen soon. And then sales tax. For the first time, I put sales tax in the risk pool because we are being more aggressive than we have in the past. So I think we'll be safe at 70.7, but just identifying that that's in a little more risky position than we have in the past. Solid waste, I promise we're rounding third base here, but you'll notice kind of dank the development authority where we have to send our solid waste, MSW, municipal solid waste. They have increased their rates 26% over the past 3 years. We have gone up 17%. My apologies, that's a typo, but we have gone up well, maybe it's not 7%. Yeah. So, we are doing our best to keep pace with the development authority, but they continue to drive our costs, which means we have to respond as well. And then, like I said, our solid waste fund balance is currently at $284,000. So that's, it's healthy. It's I wouldn't say healthy. It's comptroller approved for an enterprise fund, but we would like it higher because it starts to have cash flow issues if you get much lower than that.
Yeah, and I would just add there, I mean, the project that they accomplished up there over the last 2 years, we knew going into that they would draw down on their fund balance to some extent. So we used some of their own funds to do that. There was a little bit of cost overrun on that project, so that is kind of added to that decrease in their fund balance. If activity stays on course, they'll start to build that back up again.
So just so we're being very clear, baked into the budget is a 10% increase in our MSW rates. So that is in the budget, but you've got the entire fee schedule as one of your handouts here. So you can take a look at that. Outside agencies, we did this year ask for the agencies to fill out a full questionnaire and send in their financials, which they have done. So if anybody would like to go through any of these agencies' financials and questionnaires and their requests, we have that all in my binder here, and anybody can come take a look at it. So last year, that was a request that we dig a little deeper on some of these outside agencies and where their funding comes from. We've done that. So if anybody wants to dig in and take a look at that, we have it. I've highlighted some of the ones that are changes. So Double Play, we've put in to bump those guys up to $60,000. You've got 3 there that are highlighted in blue. That is because the IDA funding, the Lewis County Development Corporation, LCDC, as well as the Chamber of Commerce funding are going to be diverted into a new organization called Naturally Lewis Incorporated, which was just founded a month or 2 ago. So that is going to go to, all of that funding will go to Naturally Lewis. It'll be $315,000. So we've zeroed out those other agencies. Also zeroed out is Mountain View Prevention Services. They have moved to dissolve that organization. So we've taken them out of the budget. And then Lewis County Historical Society, that has been one that we've had discussions in previous years. So I wanted to highlight that. Their request was for $85,000. We did bump them up to $40,000. So that's where things sit at the moment. I would also point out that the Railway Historical Society has been put in for $2,000. Capital transfers, this should look familiar. We just talked about it last month, but one thing that's changed is that capital cleanup. That is one of our capital accounts. We just added the proceeds from the sale of the Champion Gravel Pit. So that line item, or that fund, I should say, is beefed up to $104,000, which would allow us to do some more remediation or demolition next year. Yeah, I would note we're down to 3 capital accounts. I think that's appropriate. We had 15 capital accounts when I started. We had a highway roof capital account. We had a DSS Windows capital account. We had I'm not really joking. We've really had all those. So we're down to just planning for equipment and projects, and prioritizing those through the capital budget process. Continuing our momentum, as I said, I think the story of this year's budget is obviously the tax increase. And I think the story of that is that we have grown the base. We have been able to achieve a lower tax rate by improving the amount of economic activity and the value of our properties in Lewis County. And we need to continue that momentum next year. So a few items that will move that along. The Glenfield Complete Streets projects. It's not just 600,000, it's 600,000 plus our CHIPS funding, but the county's commitment is going to be $600,000. Naturally Lewis, as I mentioned, we're funding that organization at $315,000. Obviously, they're dedicated exclusively to economic development. Facade program round 3. We're looking to run that again. We originally ran the first 2 rounds with our American Rescue Plan funds money. This round, we're going to run on our own, so without American Rescue Plan funds. And then planning projects. There's a line item in the planning community development budget that is planning projects that has $215,000 in it. That has helped us with all kinds of things in terms of zoning, in terms of helping towns and villages plan for water and sewer expansions. And so we want to continue to support that line item. American Rescue Plan funding, we still have a couple things left with that funding. The Rails to Trails, obviously we're planning on using $1.5 million when that property closes, which should be within the next month or so. And then the broadband program, we still have $250,000 to finish out our projects that we have on tap there. We may want to do more projects once we finish those, but just to finish what we have, $250,000. Fund balance funding, there's a few items that are not appropriated, but we do want to continue the vacant property revitalization program round 2 for $500,000 that was executed, that would be executed by Naturally Lewis. Lions Falls School, that's a property that we are looking to redevelop similarly to how we had success with Glenfield, but it's going to need a little bit of work. We're hoping that this would be basically grant match, and then blight remediation, like I said, we've got $104,000 in a fund for that. So keeping the momentum going so that we can continue to expand the economic base in Lewis County. Fiscal targets, I don't need to go through all these, but we are meeting them all. They were just established earlier this year. Questions and discussion. Tax rate, lowest in 27 years, lowest since 1997. Significant savings for the community. General fund, 27 million is still healthy. So, there's still room, even with these tax cuts we're proposing, there's still plenty of room for legislative initiatives next year. So with that, I turn it over to the legislators. Any comment, questions?
Health system fund balance.
Yeah, if you could use your microphone, that would be great.
What would the required health system fund balance be? It says 16%, but what's the dollar value?
14 million currently.
That's the total 14 million?
I'm sorry, are you talking about Lewis County Health System?
Maintaining a health system fund balance at
Yes.
least 16%.
That's the hospital, the health system of 16%. 16% of their budget, which will be around $85 million, would be 14 million.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I confused it with the health insurance, right?
Our health insurance fund balance, we didn't make that an official, financial target, but we do want to keep it around at least $1 million, and our goal is 2 million, I think.
Correct. Yes.
Ryan, what's the justification for double play?
The justification is that we continue to fall short on many of our public health goals, and our public health metrics are not the best. In fact, in many cases, they're some of the worst in New York State. It's the only, community center model that we have in Lewis County, and they're trying to expand, obviously, in their new location. And so they've asked for increased support for that. And our thought was that it is congruent with our mission, what we're trying to accomplish.
Ryan, could you go back to the assessed value sheet?
Sure. This one?
Nope, one more, go forward one, that one.
Yep.
And what really drives, in my mind, is the current value at 2.5, proposed at 2.9. That's almost a $400 million increase. And there's only 2 revalves being done, which shows the growth. Like you said, it adds to the growth. But you look at the areas with the biggest growth factor is Montague, Osceola, and Pinckney of 26%. That's where the significant growth is in the county, and a large portion of that is tourism and recreation, where they build a seasonal home, which in turn in 10 years becomes their permanent home. They hire a local contractor, which in turn buys products from local departments, lumber mills, what have you. That goes back to the tax, or our taxes, and it's a compounding factor. It comes full circle. And I mean, also you look at Diana and then Greg with the 2 biggest lakes, Bonaparte and Branningham. So the tourism and recreation factor is a big driving number in the overall assessed value.
I would add that West Turin was actually our town that had the highest population growth in the 2020 census. So that, you really are seeing that migration to the Tug Hill.
Any other questions for Ryan?
Ian's got one. Tom?
Ian?
Yeah, I showed a slide a couple months ago when we first talked about our first budget discussion. Real estate values across the country are up at a higher rate than inflation, but this is even more so than national rates.
Anyone else on the committee or in the audience?
Okay, thanks.
If that's all, thank you very much, Ryan. You only took 2.5 times what you allotted yourself. You did good. Yes, very good. And I guess we can move on to resolutions.
The first one is adopting local law number 1-2023, a local law to authorize overriding the tax levy limit established by General Municipal Law 3C, aka the 2% tax cap for the Lewis County 2024 budget.
Definitely not necessary, but I don't know where we stand in the process, whether you can.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Adopting local law number 2-2023, a local law of the County of Lewis providing partial real property tax exemptions for volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers pursuant to Section 466A of the real property tax law.
Any questions or comments?
What's the number? Is it 10% or?
We used to have a requirement, under the prior law, you could only go up to $3,000. Now it's just 10%,
Okay.
it's open. And it covers firefighters who volunteered for 20 years, that we continue to cover them with their spouse.
Thank you. Also, the way it's worded, I think it covers that if husband and wife are both in the fire department, it's 10% each.
I'm not sure. I
That
don't
was the
think,
interpretation I got from real property.
maybe. I don't know if Candy's here, but I'll double check that before the board meeting.
Because I had someone ask that question of me and
Yeah,
I got a hold of Candy and that's the way she interpreted it. It wouldn't really be 20%, it would be 10 and then 10 after the first 10 was taken off.
I think we'll have to double check that. I'm not sure that that's the case, but I'll double check.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried? Unless there's anything else, we can have to move and we got a couple items for executive session involving personnel and whatever else,
And property,
property.
county property.
Can I get a motion to move into executive session? Josh, seconded by Jeff. All in favor, say aye. We are moving into executive session.